stoked to talk to you, actually, because I just got put on you recently. I don't know where it was in my Spotify algorithm, but Bounce Back came up, and I was like, this song is dope. So I added it to my my frequent playlist, and so I've been a fan since. And then I saw you pop up on the calendar, and I was like, hell yeah, we get to talk.
That's fire, dude. Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And we know you got a new album that just dropped a couple weeks ago, California Poppy 2. But before we talk about that, why don't you take us all the way back and just let us know how you got into music to begin with?
Okay, dope. Yeah, so I was born into music. My mom, I grew up in the church, and my family on my mom's side was heavily singing in the church. Like my auntie played the keys, she was a choir director. My uncle sang, my cousin sang, my mom was in the choir. My family actually had a gospel quartet in the Bay Area. So that side of the family was heavily, big into music. And I think when it comes to my dad, he played a lot of reggae, a lot of Bob Marley and the Wailers. So he was big into music, but also they had a delivery service while I was growing up called IDS Courier Service. They're still doing it in the Bay Area. And so I would have, I spent a lot of my time in the back of cars just listening to, old school music, KBLX, The Quiet Storm, all that kind of stuff. So I was always around music.
Yeah, sounds like you were, I mean, besides being music lovers, your whole family were performers. So how young were you when you were, you said you were singing in the church also? How young were you when you started doing that?
Well, I think I was in the choir, the kids choir for a little bit, but I played more the drums when I was in church than anything. Even when I played the drums, I wasn't like the main drummer. They would just let me drum sometimes. And that's why I think I had an easy transition from like drumming to keyboard and programming, because I was already playing the drums, and programming drums is super simple. So yeah.
Do you remember how old you were when you started tinkering around with like beats and computer, kind of doing it, taking it from church, messing around and just kind of being in the background to being at home, messing around yourself?
I was young, dude. My mom got me she started buying me like keyboards and stuff when I was like 7 or 8. And I remember one of the first, maybe not the first one, like the second or third, like Casio keyboard I had was one of the ones where it gave you 5 tracks to record like different loops. So I could do like keys and bass and drums. So that was probably like, I was young, probably like 8 or 9. And then when I got into middle school, I got a real computer. And then I remember back then they had like LimeWire and Kazaa and all that. And I legally downloaded like the Kool Edit Pro and all that kind of stuff. So I really started messing with it. And then my boy named Sam, he was the first dude I knew. I grew up with him. He was the first kid I knew with a Mac, like when Macs were like early.
Sure.
And they had like early GarageBand. And when I got hip to GarageBand, dude, it was over with, because you could do everything. Like you can make the beat, you can sing. So I think it was around middle school is kind of when it got real, for sure.
Nice. So I was gonna say, it sounds like GarageBand was the game changer.
For sure. GarageBand was the first, like, what they would call a DAW that I got into, where you could do everything. So
yeah. Yep. And for those casual listeners, a DAW is basically just like a digital audio, interface that you can work with, such as, Logic or Pro Tools. And so you started making some music. Were you taking piano lessons and stuff too growing up? Like was someone teaching you how to play piano when you had that, or were you kind of just self-taught?
What I know is self-taught. I do remember my mom, she tried her hardest to put me in like piano lessons, and I just hated it. And she ended up taking me out. It's one of the biggest regrets. Like I tell her, like, I wish she would have kept me in piano lessons.
Right.
But yeah, I did it for like a summer, maybe, learn some basics. But other than that, it's just kind of been playing by ear and just figuring it out as I go. And it's dope though, because now like you have programs where you don't even necessarily have to know how to play. If you have an ear for it, you could put it together with a mouse and a keyboard,
Sure.
Which is crazy. So I feel like as long as you got an ear for it, you can figure it out.
Definitely, yeah. And some of these DAWs now, they'll even be like, oh, I just want to keep this song in C minor, and so it won't let you choose the wrong chord, and it's crazy.
It's crazy, dude. It's crazy.
So you use GarageBand, and are you starting to make kind of just full out kind of demo quality tracks like once you get into middle school, high school? Is that where it starts?
I think in middle school, it was not serious. It was just me being an idiot, you know, just figuring things out, just having fun, like rapping with friends over like the most basic like keys and drums and freestyling and all that. And I think as I got towards like high school, when I kind of really started having a better understanding of music and song structure, that's when it became like me putting together full songs. And by that time, like I was in a rap group with a bunch of friends, and I was always the dude who was like making the beats and engineering. Like even to this day, like if I'm in studio sessions with certain people or with anybody really, I can engineer myself. Like it's been times where we've had an engineer there, and I tell him like, bro, you could have a day off today. You know, like I'll because it's like you get into a workflow, and if you could engineer yourself, things just go way faster. And I've been doing it literally since like 8th grade. You know, so
Wow.
I think it was around 8th grade that I started, yeah, like I said, getting more serious with like recording people and trying to mix it and all that kind of stuff.
Were you guys, once you got to high school and you had your you and your friends in kind of a rap group, were you guys looking for areas like venues to perform at, or were you just going to parties and performing, or tell me a little bit about the first time you guys actually got in front of some crowds to like formally, perform some of these songs?
Yeah, I think at the time we weren't really because, like I said, it was still like a hobby and we were having fun. We weren't looking to do like shows and stuff. Like we were big on just like recording and burning CDs and either giving them out or selling them. That was like our thing. And we
Mm.
got pretty popular in high school. And I remember one of the earliest memories I have of actually performing as a group. It was it was this girl's like 16th birthday party or 15th birthday party, and she had like a little venue, and we got on stage and we rapped and all that because it's like for the high school that we went to, like a lot of the kids from my high school, and they knew the words, and that was kind of crazy to me because they
Nice.
knew it. But yeah, that was around it. I'll say like, yeah, around 15, 14, 15.
Right. That sounds fun. So you're doing it, casually just with your friends in high school, party here and party there. Where does it go from doing that to taking it a little bit more seriously?
I think, like I said, in high school, we kind of got popular. So I think just the popularity of it and the eyes on us and the little pressure around just like being kind of popular made us take it more serious. And then at the time too, what's crazy about the Bay rap scene is like that was so I went to middle school and high school with G-Eazy, and he was in a rap group. And you have all these dudes like Lil B and the Pack. You know, they were popping off when we were in high school. The Cataracts were when we were in high school. Early
Wow.
HBK with I Am Sue and Pilo and all those
Yeah.
guys were a couple cities down. So it was like this bubbling scene of music. We didn't like at the time we couldn't envision like G was gonna be as big as he is now.
Right.
You had this whole little community of like young cats like rapping and shit. So I think as we got older, dudes just started getting better. You know, like I feel like you just kind of start figuring it out. You know what you like, you know your sound a little more. You get better technically with rapping and rhyming. So by the time it was like 11th or 12th grade, it's kind of like we had gotten to a groove of really, we were doing like more shows here and there, putting out more CDs. I was doing a little solo stuff. Yeah, so it kind of got a little more serious. And then, I ended up getting a scholarship offer to Boise State. So I feel like with that, I played for. I want to. Am I going too fast? Am I
No,
moving?
perfect. Yeah,
Okay,
keep it
cool.
going. Yeah.
So yeah, in high school, like I played football, and I was solid at playing football. I wasn't like the best, but I was good. So I got a scholarship offer to play football in Boise. And for me, it really wasn't my passion, but I was
Mm,
good at it, and I knew it would mean a lot to my family, especially my parents, to go
sure.
get a college degree. So I ended up going to Boise and playing football. But my heart was always in music. Like I was a dude in the dorm room who had the microphone set up and the speakers, and people would come by, chicks would come by and rap. When I moved out and got a little apartment in the house, I had it in the closet. You know what I'm saying? Like I always
Yeah.
had music. I was always producing and everything. It's just I didn't have the real time to do it. But I always knew like that was my passion was music. So
Were you keeping in touch with your friends? Well, because you kind of left, one of the best states, if not the best states, to do music,
right.
to play football and go to college. Were you keeping in touch with your friends? Like, hey, check out what I've just recorded. Were you still doing that sort of thing, or did it was it kind of paused aside from just tinkering around on the computer every now and then?
I think it was a little of both. Like when I first got there, for sure, it was a lot. After I kind of got adjusted, like I said, I was sending music back and forth, and we were still recording the music. But as like the years went on, like football became more time consuming and more central to my life. So I wasn't doing as much music. So it kind of like I didn't have as much time to do music with the homies like I used to. Like we were doing it now and then, but I also wasn't even doing it for myself, you know, because I had classes. We did 5:45s. I had classes from 8 in the morning, and we had practice and film. So it was like every day was consumed. So when I could, you know, if anything, I was more sending beats around because, you know, you can make a beat in the spare time and send it to the homies, but actually doing music kind of slowed down for sure.
Yeah. So what changed to where you kind of got refocused on music? Was that after college? Did you graduate? What happened?
So like I said, I knew music was my passion. I knew I was going to do music. I wasn't a guy who went to college and thought I was going to go to the NFL. Yeah, I wasn't that guy.
Right.
So I knew when I got out of college, I would just keep doing music. So when I got out of college, I graduated in 2013. I came back home, was staying with my parents, and just hopped right back into the music. And for the first couple years, I'm not gonna lie, it was tough. It was slow because I had to restart everything. And at that same time, a lot of the friends who I grew up with, either they had moved, they had went to college, they were traveling. So when I came back, there really wasn't anybody around.
Right.
So I was doing a lot of music alone, and this was before I kind of got on the scene and of the Bay Area music again. I was still trying to figure things out. But for me, like I said, my parents still had the delivery service. So when I came home, I literally started working for them again. Like I was working from 8 in the morning to 6 p.m., you know, with them.
Wow.
And I'd be writing raps in the car. And then when I got off, I would kind of figure out a way to record. But it worked out perfectly because my studio now that I'm in right now is my parents' old business space. So they've had this business space in Berkeley since maybe 2000, you know? And when I got out of college, business for them was kind of slowing down to the point where they didn't necessarily need this space. They can run it from home or run it while they were on the road. So they were about to give it up. And I was like, yo, let me just take it over. You know, I'll pay the rent. And so I kind of took it over and turned it into my studio space, which I'm still in now. So after I got off work, I would just come and start, you know, recording and doing that. But like I said, it was a grind for a few years before anything kind of got popping at all.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know, you leave town and you come back and it's just a different scene. Everyone's gone. You maybe a little rusty.
Exactly. I couldn't even listen to my stuff from around that time, bro. I feel like it was terrible.
Right.
But it's a crucial time for me because I was trying to figure out, you could hear it in my music that I was trying to figure out where I was going. You know, like I feel like I kind of caught my stride in maybe like 2017, 18 of sonically what I wanted to do. But during that time of 2 or 3 years, it was literally me figuring it out. I have projects that sound like a totally different person. You know, I was just trying to figure out like, what is my sound? What is my message I'm trying to get across and all that.
So you mentioned you kind of had an interesting position at work because you were driving around. So you kind of have your, you know, when you're driving, I've said this a few times in conversations. I feel like driving is actually a good time to do your thinking. You know what I mean? Because you have to be alert enough to drive, but at the same time, you're kind of on autopilot. You know what I mean? Because you're not doing anything else. So you can kind of, were you listening to your beats? Like maybe you made some beats the night before and then you throw it in on your phone or something and then just listen to it in the car and start trying to come up with lyrics. Is that how it was going?
Exactly. Yeah, I was doing that for sure. And I think it's funny that you say that because when it came to driving, to be honest, like those 2 or 3 years right after college, I felt like that was like I was the most depressed I've ever been. And I feel like a lot of it stemmed from me being in the car by myself. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a gift and a curse because I got to be in the car and write raps and kind of like, you know, figure things out. But at the same time, like, I was just in the car in my head a lot of the times. And like I said, it was one of the most lonely times because everybody was gone. I went from living with like 5 of my best friends in college to being back in the crib with my parents. I had just went through some crazy stuff in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a whole lot of stuff in my mind at this critical time where I'm trying to figure life out, you know? So I feel like it was a gift and a curse in terms of like I could write and I'm free to write all day, but I'm also in my head all day. And I feel like that's where a lot of my older introspective music came from. Because I listened to my older stuff and it's like I felt like I was sad all the time because I was sad all the time, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it was a beauty in it for sure because it for sure gave me time to really hone in on my skills.
So once you kind of shook off the rust, you know, you said you felt like you hit your sonic stride a couple of years after that. Was it just, you know, practice makes perfect, just kind of getting into it more and getting more dedicated, or were there some other elements that kind of got thrown into the mix? Did you reconnect with somebody, or maybe meet some new people that inspired you along the way?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything, to be honest. And then I think the biggest thing for me was learning to trust myself in this, what I really wanted to do in my heart. Cause I feel like I went through a phase of like trying to be trendy or trying to sound like XYZ person. Cause that's what I thought would make me bigger or get me successful or get me money. And then I
Right.
got to a point where it's like, okay, I kind of found myself. And like you said, I started meeting people like I met a guy named Ian McKee. I recorded, I think it was Father Figure 1 and like a lot of Father Figure 2 with him out in Pacifica. And he opened my eyes to a lot of things because he was really experimental with the way he produced and how he recorded music. Yeah, I met a lot of people. And then, but like I said, it was really just falling into myself and understanding that the things that I don't think people would necessarily like because maybe it's not mainstream or maybe it's not commercial, there's a demographic for that. There's a market for that. And it's like you got to figure out how to tap into that market. And luckily I started putting stuff out and then I started to get a good reception. So it's just like the positive feedback loop. Like even because with me, like, and I put my whole mentality is always going back to football. I've been playing football so long and I've been an O lineman so long that I'm used to being in the trenches and not getting no respect and putting in all this kind of work because that's what O
Right.
linemen do. You don't get no glory. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? It's like it is what it is. So for me, it's like if I put out a song and got 2 fans, dude, I was juiced. You know, I was never the dude who needed to have the biggest song or have all these accolades and people like, oh my God. But for me, it's like if I could keep slowly building this fan base of people who believe in me, then I think that'll pay off. And I think that's kind of what I did. Cause like even if you look at my numbers now on Instagram, I'm not the biggest person in the world. On Twitter, I'm not the biggest person in the world. On YouTube, I don't have the most numbers. I do well, but it's like I had the people who follow me fuck with me. You know,
Right. Right.
they really like me. And it's like I'm not trying to be anybody else. I'm just doing me. And I think that's the beauty of like me figuring out my lane early and being myself is that I know that people who are following me mess with me for me. And it translates to when I hit the road, you know, it's just like real people who mess with me. So I'm lucky I figured that out kind of early and had that mindset.
For sure. I've, you know, talked to so many artists, and that's such a common theme. Like, just, you know, figure out what you want to do it well, but, you know, figure out what you want to do, because you can get so lost in the millions of things that are currently commercially working.
Right.
And it's interesting you mentioned gratitude. You know, a lot of people talk about how gratitude is such a key to becoming more successful. And because you were so thankful for just those few initial positive reactions to your music, it gave you the energy to keep going.
Right. For sure. And I can't remember. It was one of my close friends. His name is JB. And I remember we were talking, I feel like this was a couple years ago at this point, but he said something that stuck with me. And even though I had kind of already like been living by it, but he was telling me like, so he got married a few years back. And I guess before they got married, him and his wife sat down with a marriage counselor or a pastor or something to kind of just like talk things through. And he was like, one of the things that the therapist or whoever said to him was like, it's very important that you celebrate the small wins, like the smallest things, you know, matter. He's like, people get caught in the big moments and all this stuff, but you forget like all the small moments are what add up to make these big moments. And it's okay. Like if it's a small win in your book and it means something to you, you should celebrate that, whatever that celebration means to you, whether it's like, are we gonna have a glass of wine tonight? Are we gonna go out? Are we gonna have a nice dinner? But something to like commemorate these small moments. Cause I think like you said, it's all about like having gratitude for the small moments. And when you have these big moments, they mean a lot because you recognize and you paid attention to all the small moments. So it's really meaningful.
Totally. And remembering where you were before helps, I think. You know what I mean? You went from being in college, not even being able to do music really in a real way, to at least getting some feedback and positively. So it was easier for you at that point, but you got to continue to think like that, you know, continue to think of the days when you weren't getting that feedback. So obviously, you know, something was working along the way, because you start putting out these bangers and getting these good receptions. Tell us a little bit about some of those first, like, we're talking about small wins, but tell us some about a couple of the big wins that that brought you to where you're at right now.
I think earlier, one of the biggest records that set things off for me was a record I got with Nef the Pharaoh called Moxie Java. And that record just did really well for me in the Bay Area. And I think it put me in a different light to be seen.
Right.
And it's crazy because Moxie Java is a coffee spot in Boise. So it was inspired by Boise. But yeah, I think that, you know, and after that, I think a lot of things just kind of started clicking for me. Like that did well. Then I put out a album, and then I dropped Handheld GPS, which is probably like my biggest song at the time. I think even before Handheld GPS, I dropped a song called Running Man, which did really well. And that's when things kind of started picking up. Then I dropped Handheld GPS, and I feel like Handheld GPS, which is produced by Julia Lewis, who's doing hella good now, it just opened up a whole different world for me. Like I was on different kind of blog sites. I was getting write-ups that I had never had before, you know, off the song. And it just opened a million doors for me, even to the point where artists, like, I think, so I've had a few collabs with Russ, and I'm pretty sure Russ heard my music. He heard my Handheld GPS because it was on like Apple Music Hot Tracks or something. And so all this stuff, all this stuff was going on, and I ended up getting signed to Empire, which is in the Bay Area. And, you know, just being with them, because even when I first got with Empire, they were a small company, dude. Like, they were in a real small room. There's probably like 20 people working in there. Now they're international. They're in one of the biggest buildings in San Francisco, you know, at the top story. So it's like, it was a culmination of a lot of things. My manager was a crazy story about my manager. So in like 2014 or 15, I was managed by two of my homies who really didn't know too much about music, but they were like, we believe in you. We're gonna help you as much as we can.
Sure.
Really dope, Cat and Aubrey. So we did music and all this kind of stuff. Like, we put together videos. Like, they were doing well for people who didn't really do music. And then one day, I think Aubrey, in like 2014 or 15, he retweeted a freestyle I did to a Snoop Dogg song on Twitter. And his friend, who's my manager now, is Ari, just happened to see it. And at the time, Ari was a senior at San Jose State, which is like 30 or 40 minutes away from here. And he was like in the communication department, and he was the head of the radio show and all that kind of stuff. So he heard me, and he's like, yo, we got to get this guy out here to do some college shows and all that. So I went out there with him, did a few interviews, ended up doing some shows at San Jose State. Like, he opened the door to those college shows.
Wow.
And it got to a point where, you know, Kat and Aubrey kind of started doing their own thing in terms of, like, they started getting better jobs and promotions in their real life. So they couldn't be as hands-on with me. And then he kind of stepped up like, yo, I believe in you. I've been rocking with your music for a while now. I would love to manage you. And I'm like, perfect. And then, so at the time, he had just got an intern job at Empire. So as he got the intern job at Empire, I kind of was ushered in with him. And then, so as I grew, he was actually growing in the company. And now he's like a product manager over there doing like crazy stuff, working with a lot of people. So we've kind of grown at the same time. And he's just as crucial in this story as me, because like, he's running crazy plays for me, hooking me up with dope people and just doing really clean stuff. So I feel like I've been blessed to just meet the right people at the right time and drop the right songs at the right time. And it's, you know, a lot of people, it's crazy to me, like, when I talk or I hear artists talking about, and they make it seem kind of like they did it by themselves and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, dude, when you're being honest with yourself, it's a whirlwind of stuff that helps the artist get there. It's never just the artist. It's the artist, the team, the music, it's luck. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole bunch of stuff that gets you there. So I feel like I just kind of like caught a stride, and a lot of things are happening for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it's crazy, you know, how one tweet, you know, just like, you know, can like change the, you know, the whole butterfly effect of things, you know, how that can just change the course. And then all of a sudden you're working with a guy who's working at a record label that's a growing record label, and he's advancing and you're growing all at the same time. And it's just friend of a friend, you know, it's crazy. You never know. And that's that's why you should just put your stuff out there sometimes, right? And
For sure. And what's crazy about like the one tweet thing, so even like one of my biggest early songs called Running Man, I tweeted it. And like I said, I grew up with G-Eazy, so we followed each other. And so I tweeted it out and he just happened to retweet it. And he was, he was big as hell even back then. And for whatever reason, when he retweeted it, he got off Twitter for like 2 weeks.
So it just sat at the top.
At the top of his thing. And it's just stuff like that you can't pay for, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just like those little kind of moments, dude, just, and I feel like it all happens the more you put your art out there, the more you put yourself out there, you give yourself a chance to get all these opportunities and do things. Like I be telling a lot of my friends who find ways to not put music out or doubt themselves or sleep on themselves. I'm like, dude, half the battle is just giving your art to the world and letting chance and randomness figure it out, because I feel like that's what happens with a lot of people. So
yeah, and speaking of G-Eazy, like I said, he's featured in that track Bounce Back that I mentioned earlier that I've been rocking to. So you've been putting out great music this year, but you just dropped November 20th your new album California Poppy 2. Right. So it's a sequel to the your previous album California Poppy. Tell us about this album.
Yeah, so the California Poppy series started with it's really produced by Kyle Betty, who I met, I want to say like maybe 2016, 2017, through a good friend of mine, a rapper who just passed December 31st of last year, named Bugsy. And Bugsy, rest in peace, I got linked through Kyle because Kyle was producing for Bugsy, and Bugsy would bring him around. And then me and Kyle started working, and it was just like a natural chemistry to the point where we had so many songs. And we did these 2 EPs together, but he's produced like some of my biggest songs on my actual albums. Like he did Shit and Floss. He did the song I got with Guapole. He did like Freedom Love. He did a bunch of these big songs. But we had so much music at a point, and it all sonically sounded so good together that I was like, yo, dude, we should just drop this EP. And I remember I dropped the first one, and I was on the road. I can't remember where I was at. I feel like I was maybe in like Europe or something. And we dropped it, and it did really well. And then I really didn't think about it for a while. Like I didn't have intentions to drop another one until this year. Like a few months back, 3 or 4 months back, I just happened to be on Twitter, and I was listening to the original one, and I tweeted like, I tweeted something about California Poppy 2, like how would y'all feel if I dropped California Poppy 2, or do y'all want a California Poppy 2? And like the retweets and all, it went crazy. And I was like, man, it was something I was sleeping on that I didn't know that people really wanted another one. So right. After that, luckily, like I said, because we make music so much, we already had a few songs in the can. So it was about just fixing those songs up. And then I did a couple more songs afterwards, and then it just, came to be like that.
That's awesome. I got to say, what I like about your music is, like you said, there were times in your life where you're real serious and maybe you were more down, but you get introspective, but then you also get, funny at times, so I love that versatility. So we'll definitely be bumping California Poppy 2, but tell us a little bit about some of your philanthropic work, because I think it's so cool that you are involved in multiple organizations. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that work?
Yeah, I just feel like it's always good to give back in some capacity, especially when to me, I feel like I've been blessed with a lot of opportunities and to be places a lot of people haven't been, and to have resources a lot of people don't have. So it just always feels right for me to try to find a way to give back. So I think it was last year we donated like a tunnel to the Berkeley High football team that they could run out of, and it got the smoke and stuff that comes out. It's pretty
wow. It's awesome.
Yeah, so we did that for the team, and I'm trying to keep providing resources to them, because I remember in high school, football was everything, and I remember it was a lot of dudes who just didn't have money to get like cleats, or they didn't have money to get the best Under Armour or whatever. And even to the point where I think it's a lot better now, but when I was at Berkeley High, we didn't always have the best equipment in terms of shoulder pads and helmets and all that kind of stuff. So whenever I get an opportunity to give back to the program, I do with that. I partner up a lot with the People's Breakfast of Oakland, which is one of my good friends. His name is Rolla. It's ran by, his name is Delancey, we call him Rolla, but it's ran by Rolla and Blake. And they've started this organization, which is really, I respect it because it's really hands-on in this industry, and they're helping the houseless people of Oakland in terms of like, they're out there multiple times a week giving food, clothing, sanitary, like toothbrushes, deodorant, hand sanitizer, all this kind of stuff, to really the people who kind of been forgotten in all of this. So I feel like it's big to give back to them. We did something earlier this year where it was the People's Breakfast, and it was me, Kehlani, Guap Dad, and All Black. And we all partnered up with Puma, and we gave out like 500 pairs of sneakers in the trenches of Oakland. We gave out like 1,000 dinners, like all types of stuff, which it was just amazing to like, you know, be out there and be doing that. I think it was last year, maybe the year before last, I did this, which I wanted to keep doing, but the COVID stuff happened. It was a fundraiser event. It's called Good and Proper, which all the proceeds from like the money we raise and the merchandise we sell, and we were selling drinks and food, all of that money went to, we gave it to a program in Oakland called Youth Radio, which is just where a bunch of kids come and they learn how to engineer, they learn how to run their own radio program, podcast, they learn how to do journalism, all this. We donated, I think we got like $3,000 or $4,000, and Empire matched it, and we gave it to Youth Radio. So just different type of, you know, incentives and stuff like that. Anywhere I could fit in to do that, I'll always try to do.
Yeah, man, mad props for that. Good for you. So Rexx, man, it's been a real pleasure. It sounds like, you know, everything's going your way, except 2020 in a general sense for everybody, you know. Right. But once you know, things are looking up. I don't know if you heard, but I read last night that first person in the UK got the shot, first civilian, like a 9-year-old woman or something like that. So
I saw that, dude. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. So maybe shows will be, you know, hopefully we'll get back to shows and we can watch you live.
Definitely.
But we like to end the interview by asking, if you had one piece of advice for aspiring artists, what would it be?
Oh man, one piece of advice. I think it's one. I think it's just the cliche thing of like, you know, trusting yourself and surrounding yourself with the right people. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, I think the biggest thing, one of the worst things you could do is, even if, you know, it makes you a bigger artist, but if you step outside of yourself and you create art that really doesn't mean anything to you, you'll get to a point where it won't resonate with you and your soul. You know what I'm saying? And even though it's a longer journey, maybe if you do the music that you want to do, always trust yourself and do the music you want to do. And I think surrounding yourself with the right people and the right team is everything. Like, I remember I was at a point where I thought I had to do everything myself, from recording myself to doing my album art to mixing it to doing the marketing and all these things. But there are people around you that believe in you. And I feel like a lot of the times, like, artists might think, I need this big time manager, or I need this big time PR company, or I need something that's super big, when you got, like I said, like I was telling you about Cat and Aubrey, you got friends around you who believe in you and they just need a chance. You know, like, even if you look at LeBron and you look at LeBron and Maverick, like, and the people around him, those are all his boys he grew up with. He just put them in positions to, you know, help him and his brand, but by doing that, they also help themselves. So I think it's people around you that are willing to help you, and if you can get on the same page and the same accord, you know, it's, you know, telling what you could do.
Yeah, I think that's real good advice, real functional, usable advice. You know, I think you know, there's always the try your best, don't quit, and like you said, do you, you know, which is true, because that's why it is cliche. But surrounding yourself with the right people, and maybe giving people a chance, and who may not be the typical person for that role, I think is a really interesting piece of advice. And I think you explained it perfectly. Bring it back.